Welcome to the Bonita Business Podcast, where we bring you behind-the-scenes insights and unexpected ideas, ones that are creating business and career success right here in my chosen hometown of Bonita Springs, Florida. I'm your host, Bonita business coach Darcy Eikenberg. I'm the author of Bring Your Superpowers to Work and the founder of the leadership development firm RedCapeRevolution.com. I'm so glad you're here with me today. What if you had to lead not just one business, but multiple businesses inside your company? And on top of that, what if you had to make sure they're running smoothly 24 hours a day, 365 days a year? Well, that's the job that Brian Kramer does. He's the general manager of the Hyatt Regency Coconut Point and Spa. Maybe you've been there for a meeting or a special event, or maybe you had a little staycation in this local jewel. In our interview, Brian describes all the different work that goes on behind the scenes, and you might be surprised to hear all the various businesses that exist inside this one business. It all comes together under Brian's leadership to create not only a destination for us locally, but for people around the world who want to come and enjoy a little time in Southwest Florida. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Woods, Weidenmiller, Machete, and Rudnick, attorneys at law. A little later in the show, I chat with partner Jay Caudill, who just opened the firm's office here in Bonita Springs. We'll link to more information about the firm on our show notes page, which you can find at bonitabusinesspodcast.com. One more thing before we begin. Brian and I decided to take our chat outside onto the beautiful Hyatt grounds. In the moment, it was a great decision. It was a gorgeous day and a gorgeous place. Later, though, I realized the sound of the fountains in the background of this interview might be a little distracting. We've done what we can to make it easier on your ears, but maybe you want to picture yourself sitting with us while the water flows and the birds chirp outside. I'll resist the urge to record outside another time, but hey, it's beautiful Bonita, and so I hope you forgive me. Here's my interview with Brian Kramer, General Manager of the Hyatt Regency Coconut Point Resort and Spa right here in Bonita Springs, Florida. Brian Kramer, thanks so much for having me here at the Hyatt Resort and for being on the Bonita Business Podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. So we're actually sitting outside today in the beautiful pond and fountain area, and it's kind of nice to enjoy the property. How often do you get to enjoy this property that you work on?
Well, sometimes I got to remind myself that I work in paradise, and so to do that I got to get up from my office and I got to take a walk around the grounds. So I do it a couple of times a day to get out here and just take in the scenery and breathe the fresh air and take that mental break from the day, and also check on how the pool decks are doing.
Yeah. So taking a walk around the grounds, this property's pretty big. So tell me a little bit about the size and scope of the Hyatt here.
Yeah, so we're a fairly large resort. We have 454 guest rooms here at the property. We have over 35,000 square feet of meeting space. And we have just about 600 employees total around the resort. We're spread out over many acres with 4 different pools and 4 different slides and rock climbing walls and chipping greens and putting greens. So there's just a lot of acreage to cover. So you're right, getting out and walking around can take a while.
Get your steps in if you're checking on everything every day, right?
Yeah.
So your title is General Manager,
That's
correct? So what really does that entail?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of people wonder about that, but it's interesting because we do a lot of mentorship type programs here at the resort, and when I have somebody come and follow me for the day, they'll by the end of the day turn around and say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize how many different things you do through the course of the day." Where my overall responsibility is the full operation of the resort, and making sure that we provide tremendous service for all of our guests and provide a great experience for our associates as well. But that means that I oversee all these different businesses that form under one roof. So I have a hotel that I operate. I have a number of restaurants that I also operate. I have a number of bars that I operate. I have a spa that I operate. I have a full engineering team here at the resort that just about has every trade represented, from electricians and plumbers and locksmiths. So I have all these different businesses that all fall under one roof And my job is to make sure that they all operate together as a whole, and that we provide tremendous services for people that are coming to stay at our resort. And a big part of that is through the course of my day, I could be talking about what kind of fish we're serving in the restaurant in one conversation, and within 3 minutes I could be talking about what kind of water heater we need to replace in the engine room in the resort. So it can jump from conversation to conversation about completely different topics all throughout the course of the day. So to be a general manager, you really have to have yourself focused on being able to multitask different type parts of the business on a moment's notice as people need it.
So how did you learn all that? I mean, those are all specific professions in themselves.
That's
and to
right.
lead any one of those professions is an accomplishment. So what was your background, and how did you get where you are now?
So I started in the hotel industry. I started back in 1986. It was my very first job in Washington, D.C. at the Hyatt Regency Crystal City. And my first job was an overnight convention services setup employee. And I came in on the overnight, and I would set up all of the meeting rooms for all of the conventions that were going to happen starting the very next day. I did that for a couple of months, and then I left. I went back to school and finished my degree in hospitality. And while I was doing my degree in hospitality, I took a job back at the Grand Hyatt New York in 1989. And my first job there was what they called an overnight folio runner. So I came in at midnight in a 1,400 room property on top of Grand Central Station. And my job was to run the 800 some odd bills of all the people that were checking out the next day, and then walk around and slide them underneath your guest room door. So when you woke up in the morning, you had your bill. I was the guy that delivered it.
Okay, I always wondered who did that.
So
Yeah.
that was my start. And then from there, I basically worked through just about all the departments in the hotel. So I've worked in the front office, I've worked in the restaurants, I've worked in the banquets departments, and I've been with Hyatt for just over 30 years now. And in those 30 years, I think I've been through just about every department that you can within Hyatt. And you learn as you go. So started from the ground up and just worked my way through, and it gave me the knowledge that I needed to help now direct those departments.
So you came here to the Bonita property about 4 years ago?
That's right.
Now? So what was the biggest surprise when you came into this market and this property for, based on, compared to where you've been before?
Well, a lot of the places that I've been in my career, I started in New York and went from New York up to Boston, Massachusetts, and I lived up there for a few years. I went to Washington, D.C. I went to the Eastern Shore of Maryland for a while and opened a resort there. Prior to this job, I was in the Clearwater market up in Tampa. I was there for 5 years and opened a new resort that we had up there. And when I got down here, I think the biggest surprise was how much unbelievable natural beauty that we had down here in this area, and this resort is just a hidden gem in my mind. I put this up there as one of the top resorts that we have in our portfolio of hotels with Hyatt, and I just don't think enough people know that it's here. And that's my job now, is to come in and to make sure everybody knows that it's here, and to really drive the business here at the resort and to continually improve upon it. But just the natural beauty, the amount of amenities that we offer here at this resort, the wonderful employee base that we have that really make this resort what it is. Those were some really fun, neat, cool surprises for me to encounter when I got here.
Yeah, so tell me about employees. So you had said, you dropped the big number, 600 people.
Yes.
That are employed here across all those different types of businesses.
That's right.
So what's the biggest challenge that you see around keeping a good employee base, happy, productive, and keeping people in jobs?
Well, with one fun thing for Hyatt is that we're big believers in promoting from within, and we're big believers on continuing education. So we offer tuition assistance programs for those that want to go to school and continue to further themselves. And we provide tremendous opportunity for those that want to move up within the organization to do that. We have programs that we put in place here at the resort. Future Leaders programs is one, for example. It's sort of our own internal version of a hospitality degree for those that don't necessarily want to go to a full-time university. They can come here, they can learn about all the different areas and just broaden their knowledge of the industry and provide our own future leaders of tomorrow. So that really helps to motivate the team. And you're here a lot. You spend a lot of time here at the resort. You work a lot of hours. And so we really try to make it as much of a family atmosphere as we can, where our mission is to care for people so that they can be their best. And if you notice in our mission statement, we don't say to care for our guests so they can be their best. We say care for people. And we mean that sincerely, because we not only want to take care of our hotel guests that are coming and paying the bills, but we also want to take care of our employees so that they're happy in what they're doing, because if they're happy, they're going to make our customers happy. So we spend a lot of time and emphasis on really working to ensure that our employees are just as happy as our guests are staying here, working here at the resort.
So Hyatt has some programs nationally that you get to leverage and take advantage of, but
Certainly.
Tell me about what's happening here locally, because obviously we have, some specific challenges in our local market with making sure we have great workers and people are being able to find the jobs that they, to know there's an opportunity at a place like this.
Yeah, that's right. Once you're in the door and you're working for us, you find out all the great things that we have to offer and what Hyatt specifically has to offer. But getting them in the doors is always a challenge. And I think in our market specifically, we're faced with a couple of different challenges. The first is, I think, sort of the elephant in the room is a housing, affordable housing crisis that we have here, and just being able to have affordable housing close enough to be able to have people come down here and be able to work. And then transportation goes hand in hand with that. Having a transportation system, we provide some transportation options for some of our employees that we have here at the hotel, and we run certain shuttles and buses on our own, and we provide bicycles to some of our employees that live close enough to be able to bike to work. But certainly, I think from a macroeconomic standpoint in this community, those I think are some of the two biggest challenges. And then the hardest area for us to fill that we find is in our culinary department, and finding good quality chefs to come in and work, because there's a lot of competition for that down here, not only amongst the hotels, but you have all the country clubs and all the private restaurants. Tourism is our number one industry that we have in this area, and so everybody's vying for that next best chef to come and work for them. So finding those types of employees are a challenge for us.
Back to my interview in just a moment. But right now, I'm here with Jay Cottle, a partner in the law firm of Woods, Weidenmiller, Machete, and Rudnick, and they're our sponsor for this episode of the Bonita Business Podcast. So Jay, what's the biggest misconception people have about hiring a lawyer?
Well, in real estate matters, which is what I primarily do, there are some misconceptions about cost. Typically, people make the assumption that by hiring a lawyer, it's going to cost them a significant amount more money in order to handle their transaction. Really, in reality, it's usually between $150 to $200. In other areas of the law, I think people are sometimes attracted by lower hourly rates for attorneys. Sometimes actually you're more benefited by hiring a more experienced attorney who may charge a little more for that experience, but because of that experience they may be able to handle your matter more efficiently and your overall bill would be less. So that would be two things that I think that people have a misconception about attorneys.
Makes a lot of sense. So thanks, Jay. We appreciate you and our friends at Woods, Weidenmiller, Machete, and Rudnick. You can find Jay and the Bonita Springs office in the North Bay Village, and that's where Bonefish is, right next to Bonita Brunch. And now, let's go back to my interview.
So I think to do that, I know you shared before that you're involved with FGCU and with some of the other groups locally, local restaurateurs. So what kind of efforts are going on to help fill that gap and help people find, that there might be opportunities in culinary jobs?
So I serve on the Directors Council of Florida Gulf Coast University's School of Hospitality Management, and we're always talking about how can we broaden their culinary program there. So there's a lot of focus and emphasis right now. The university's changing. It's got the new president that's there now, and he's doing some wonderful things, expanding upon some of the great things that our past president had done at FGCU. But I think there's some good future opportunities for us to continue to expand the programming at FGCU, including culinary programs. And then I'm also involved as an executive member of the board of the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association, and we do a lot of work with ProStart and getting out there and getting into the high schools and getting involved in the high schools and showing them there's another opportunity. Not everybody will go to college. Not everybody is designed or wants to go to college, has designs on or wants to go to college. And there's some wonderful technical schools that you can go to learn the culinary traits. And so we invite them into our hotels. We take them on tours. We probably once a month we have a different high school come in with a group of people, and we show them what are the opportunities that they can do, and just hopefully broaden their horizons and let them know that there are some things right here in their backyard that they can do out of school. And we've had some success with that. We've hired a lot of people through those programs.
Are you going to be doing anything with the new Bonita Springs High School?
I'm sure we will, yeah. We're letting them get their feet up and under them right now. School year's just getting going for them, but I'm sure once they get rolling, and we'll be involved with them.
Yeah, so it's certainly, being in the schools and being able to do more career and giving people the exposure to say this is a career, this is something that you can do, is something that I think a lot of businesses are interested in doing, and it sounds like you guys have a regular process of doing that and things that you share, and you do find you can hire from that. You said,
absolutely. The number of people after we're done with a class of 30 or 40 high school students that come through that shake my hand on the way out and say, I'm going to call you again in another year when I'm graduated or when I'm coming out. It's very encouraging.
And do they?
They do. Not every one of them, but a lot of them do.
Which is something that's funny that I find as a business coach. If sometimes people will say, oh, here's my friend or here's my student who doesn't know what's next. It's like, here's these opportunities, pick up the phone, email, find them. But, and you're giving people direct invitation. So taking that initiative is really important.
That's right.
So overall, so you mentioned, part of your job is to make this hidden gem not so hidden. How's business?
Business has been incredible. We've been fortunate over the last few years to just keep setting new high watermarks for the resort in just about every arena that we could ask to set them in. This year is no exception. Even last year, 2017, challenging year with the hurricane that we had come through, but even though we closed the resort for 10 days during the hurricane and then rebuilt when it was done, it still was a record-setting year for us in the hotel. It shows you how busy we were pre the hurricane and how quickly we recovered after the hurricane. And this year, 2018, is set to be our number one year that we've ever had since the hotel's been open. So we're very, very fortunate and feel blessed that the hotel is doing as well as it is.
So, but how do you grow in a business like that? Because you only have so many nights in a hotel room, right? And you only have so many seats at a restaurant every night. I mean, how do you top yourself? How do you grow?
It is a perishable commodity for sure. If you have a night go by and the room sits empty, you can't get that night back. We work really hard. Our sales and marketing team here at the resort has done a tremendous job of getting out and really. One thing that I felt that we've done over these last couple of years is we've really gotten out in the local community more than we've ever been before. We've really gotten involved in a lot of local community efforts with different events, charities, sponsorships. We've done more than we've ever done in our history. And I think that's your local community. I can't underestimate underestimate the importance of that local community to the success of a business. And so we've gotten involved with all of the soccer leagues and little leagues, and we're working to sponsor teams, and we have banners up everywhere and just letting the local market know that we're here and there for them. And that's brought in some tremendous local staycations. Especially, we just last year opened our new $7 million water park with our lazy river, and letting everybody know that that was here. It was important to us, and you can't walk out here on a weekend, or I can't walk out here on a weekend at least, and not run into at least 2 or 3 of my neighbors that live locally that have come and doing a staycation here at the resort. So that's been a big part of our business. But then our sales efforts have been more than doubled in our feeder markets in the Boston area, the Chicago area, places where people need to get out of that cold. And I'll tell you, them having those nice cold winters up there, makes it much more attractive to come down here and be in this part of Florida those times of year.
Good marketing for us,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So, well, you mentioned, the size and the scope of the property, and I know earlier this year that there was some kind of transaction with host hotels.
That's
so
correct.
Tell me about that, and how does that affect you, and how does that affect the Hyatt brand that we know here in Bonita Springs?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I often get a lot of questions on it from people. Brian, are you okay? Is everything okay? We changed is the name going to change on the hotel? It doesn't. Within Hyatt, we have 3 different models of ownership groups. We have our wholly owned hotels, which Hyatt owns outright. We have our managed properties, which are properties that are managed by or owned by a third party and managed by Hyatt under a management agreement. And then we have our franchise models, where you go out and you run it yourself, and you just pay to have our name on the building, and you have to follow certain guidelines that we set for expectations. Our hotel used to be a wholly owned property. We did sell it with 2 other properties. We sold this hotel. We sold the Grand Hyatt San Francisco and the Andaz Maui in Hawaii as a bundle. It's no secret, for the price that was out there, the 3 hotels sold for $1 billion even, with a B. Host Hotels and Resorts bought the 3 properties, and they are our single largest owner that we have within Hyatt. They own more Hyatt hotels than any other ownership group that we have. And we've sold the hotels to them under the conditions of managing them as Hyatts under a very long-term management agreement. So we've signed a very long-term management agreement so that the hotel will remain a Hyatt. Nothing changes to the general public other than the ownership is different. And Host, we have a tremendous relationship with them. They own a lot of very, very high-end properties. They own the 2 Ritz-Carlton hotels here in Naples, Tiburon and the beach. They own the Ritz-Carlton in Amelia Island. They own a lot of Hyatts, as I mentioned. They owned our Hyatt Regency, Maui in Hawaii, our Grand Hyatt Washington, all very top-tier properties. And so they're a great ownership to have. They invest in their properties. And to our employees and to guests of the hotel, there's no difference whatsoever. To me, the only difference is now I have 2 bosses. I have Hyatt and I have a new boss at Host.
I was going to ask you how that affects it, but it kind of sounds like that's it's a real estate deal, and like you do all the work and then they get their cut. So
Right.
It sounds like a perfect
for
solution
you.
I
It's
want
a
to
great
be part
fit.
of Host.
Yeah, it's a great fit. It's a great synergy. They've been terrific owners, and we look forward to a long-term relationship with them.
Well, it was something that was happening in the news, and it didn't seem to register as much of a blip. So thank you for explaining it a little more, because it is a big property, and those kind of deals get really complicated. And sometimes people wonder, well, gee, is someday this going to change to be something else?
Yeah, and we're very proud of the fact that this hotel, our portion of the $1 billion sales price, made this the single largest real estate transaction in Southwest Florida. For our hotel. So we're proud of how we've been able to build the business in the hotel over the last few years, to bring that kind of valuation to it, and to make it, and as they labeled it in all of the newspapers, a irreplaceable asset, which we're very excited about.
So you mentioned some of the different pieces in the hotel, different businesses. But what's something that would surprise the average person to know that gets done here, goes behind the scenes? I mean, you're not running door to door anymore, putting receipts under everybody's door, right? I don't think I get that anymore. I think I get mine from email.
That's right. We changed with the times.
Right.
I think that the thing that surprises people the most when they walk through is, as I mentioned earlier, just the different amount of businesses that we house under one roof. I don't think people really understand what it takes. It's sort of a small city, and when you walk through our back of the house and you look and you see that we have just about every trade in the engineering world represented here at the property, with electricians and plumbers and locksmiths and laundry facilities and everything else that we have. Everything that gets done here on property for the most part. So we have to be prepared to run this just like you would a small city. If there's pieces of furniture that break, we fix it here on property. If there's electrical work that needs to be done, we take care of it here on property. So we do contract out some services when there are large-scale projects, but for the most part, we do just about everything here. So when we walk people through the back of the house, and all of a sudden they see all these people doing things that they just don't associate with the hotel business, I think that's what takes them by surprise.
Interesting. And when you think about, especially someone who's in a trade, and I think for years it was always, well, you have to start your own business if you're going to be in the trade, to think about the fact that there are careers and there's, professional development and leadership, those careers within a bigger company, right. Just something else to think about for people who are looking at those kind of businesses and careers.
That's right.
So Brian, I'm curious, so you're very involved in the community, and the community's been important for you to help make, the Hyatt continue to be successful. If you had a magic wand and you had one thing you could change right now in our area, what would that be?
That's a very good question. I think that certainly transportation and having better transportation is a better public transportation, I think, is a big thing that I think would benefit the region, not just from a hospitality standpoint, but just a general business, from a general business environment standpoint. I think, people being able to get around and not having to rely upon having to have their own cars to get to where they need to go would be a big boon to the area and provide the resources that we need to be able to have all of the workers that we need. Right now, I think if you look, unemployment's at an all-time low right now, but you will find just about every business is looking for some sort of staff in some way, shape, or form. And being able to find people that can commute and get to where they need to go without having to own a car is a big deal. So I think if we could have, if in a magic wand I could wave my hand and we could have a great bus system or a light rail system or something that got people around, that would be something I'd wish for.
Great, because there are jobs here. People want, people want to work here, but they have to get here first.
That's right.
Great. Well, terrific. Brian Kramer at the Hyatt Regency or Hyatt Resort. What's your official?
We are the general manager at the Hyatt Regency Coconut Point Resort and Spa.
Okay, that's a mouthful, but
yes,
that's a lot. Again, it's and mechanical company and pool company and everything.
That's right.
So anyway, Brian, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
What an interesting guy, huh? And what a more complex business than most of us might realize. So, the next time you're at the Hyatt for a meeting or a special event or maybe even that well-deserved staycation, I hope you peek around the corners and look behind the scenes to notice some of the 600 people who work there and all of the different types of work they do under Brian's leadership. Thanks again to Brian Kramer at the Hyatt, and thanks also to our sponsor for this episode, the attorneys at Woods, Weidmiller, Machete, and Rudnick. They just opened a new office in Bonita Springs. You got to go check it out. You can find pictures and other links related to this episode when you visit bonitabusinesspodcast.com. And while you're there, be sure and sign up for our podcast updates and email, and you will be among the first to know about every episode this season. I'm Bonita business coach Darcy Eikenberg, and thank you for being here. If you like this episode, be sure to tell a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. And remember, Bonita may mean beautiful, but it also means business. Bye for now.